So welcome to Conversations with Leaders. I'm Wesley Story. I'm an enterprise strategist at AWS. Today, I'm joined with Amy, and I'd like you to introduce yourself a little bit, Amy, because I don't want to take that from the audience, and I'd love you to tell me about your role at Autodesk, and give me a little background if you would.
Great. So I'm Amy Bonzella, obviously, and I'm the Executive Vice President of our Architecture, Engineering, and Construction Design Solutions tools. And so what my team does is we build software for people in the AEC industry, working on everything from roads, bridges, highways, water infrastructure, stadiums, pretty much everything in the built environment.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I had no idea that you had such a massive scope, quite frankly. So how do you balance all that?
Well, I have a really great team working for me. So I spend most of my time thinking about, the broader strategic, longer term aspects of what we're trying to do, and also with customers. It's super exciting to visit our customers.
So Amy, as a leader, you've talked a lot about being an innovator and risk taker at heart. However, as you know, sometimes risk taking can be risky. So tell me a little bit about how you actually came up with that leadership style and what it means to your business.
So for me, risk isn't about being reckless. It's about really thinking about innovation and exploration, experimentation, and really thinking about different ways to try to learn and develop. And so I find that if we are open to the experimentation and we're thinking about what our outcomes are going to be, and if we're not hitting them, then it's a matter of just reorienting. So it's not about taking a risk that's so big, you're going to put the company at risk or a team or a product at risk, but it's really about taking the kind of risk that you can learn from and then build upon as you go forward.
One thing I run into with some customers, especially those that want to emulate this whole, technology industry thing of failing fast, right?
Yes.
Is culture. And how do you create that culture where failure feels safe for people? And also, if I can add this one more thing, because of your industry, you might relate to this, is some industries feel like failure is not an option, like this, it's an evil thing. Tell me a little bit about how you've created that culture that makes that okay.
It's an interesting thing, and it's changed over the years for me, because I think 7 or 8 years ago, there was this whole, fail fast. And as leaders, we're like, it's okay to fail. And my team would be looking at me like I was a crazy person, because who wakes up in the morning thinking, I'm going to fail?
Right.
You got a bunch of A players, people really excited about what they're doing, and you're telling them that they should fail. So we've kind of moved away from that language, and we talk more about experimentation. So again, it's about giving people the freedom to go and explore something, but also not having expected outcomes. So all right, we tried this, we were hoping this would happen. It didn't happen. We learned this, so we're going to stop now.
So Amy, Autodesk has sustainability as a corporate imperative. And I imagine it shows up in lots of different ways, from how you guys think about products to how you run your business. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So yes, as a company, we're, carbon neutral. We were doing all of the important things that companies do in that space. But I think more importantly, the impact we can have with our customers and helping them achieve more sustainable and resilient outcomes is really where we're different from a lot of other companies. We've been talking about sustainability for far more than 10 years before it was, fashionable to talk about. And what's interesting with our products is we help customers really reduce carbon, create more resilient buildings, lightweight things so they're easier to ship around the world. There's just a whole lot of positive outcomes that we can help deliver. And we have a couple key initiatives. One is around total carbon. So more and more these days, people are realizing it's not just the air conditioners and the heating systems that contributes to the carbon in a building. It's all of the materials you chose to build that building with, and how far did they come to get to the building. That's really called embodied carbon. And then there's this thing called operating carbon. And so the built environment contributes the most to greenhouse gases of anything, any producer at all. So we're really partnering up with our customers to try to figure out how we can build more sustainable buildings.
Is there a lesson you've learned to, keeping sustainability front and center?
It's interesting. It has to really be, it's also good for business. That's really when it was just, I think there was a time where people felt sustainability was just there, to tick a box and, make people feel good. But really, it's good for business, and it's good for the planet. I think a good example is we look at building product manufacturers and people that provide all the concrete, drywall things for buildings. These days, architects and owners are choosing suppliers based on how green they are. So if you're ignoring that, you're not going to be selected. But if you're delivering 25% less carbon emissions than the person down the road, you're going to get selected to have your materials leveraged in that project. So that's real.
So when thinking about product strategy, how does sustainability influence how your team approaches it?
So it all kind of goes back to the customer, and what customer problems are we trying to solve? What outcomes are we trying to help them deliver? And so these days, carbon's a big deal, but some of the other items that are really important is on the other end of the life cycle is operating the building or the facility. And so we've been hearing a lot from customers that they would like to adopt some of the kind of manufacturing practices with digital twins into the building space. And so we're working with them to figure out how we can help them operate better and save money and use less resources on that side of things.
Tell me more about that. That's something I get the chance to talk to a lot of customers about, but everyone might not fully understand what it is. So could you first start with what is a digital twin?
So a digital twin is effectively a digital representation of a physical thing. Mm-hmm. So it could be anything from it could be a simple Excel spreadsheet that sort of has all the parameters you need for your physical object, or it could be a full-on three-dimensional model of a building connected up to sensors that tell you, how hot is it in the building, where are the people in the building, are these conference rooms utilized very often, all kinds of information that you get off of sensors as well. All of this put together in a visual representation so that you can do things like predictive maintenance, renovations, optimizations, really to drive the most efficient and effective spaces.
So a virtual representation of a physical something or entity,
Yep.
if you will. And it sounds like lots of data. And my favorite thing about data is when you put it to action. So you started to allude to
Yep.
that, but what are some of the other things you can do to put this data into action?
So you can definitely drive a lot of insights out of that, and you might be wanting to figure out how to configure a space for, maybe you have underutilized areas of your facility and you don't know why. So you could actually play around with reconfiguring it in different ways and then watch the traffic and see how the utilization might change. And that in turn might inform your next project where you might be making different decisions about how you use the space.
So it's being able to sense and respond to different external factors and predicting outcomes and also making these automatic or autonomous decisions. Yep. Is that something you're seeing as well?
Yes, it is. In particular, because they're operating large scale facilities, even if you were to think of like a hospital, for example, and understanding all of the different componentry, equipment in there, and like how often does it need to be refreshed? Do you have it on order? Is it a critical piece of equipment that might be ready to fail? Do you have a backup? All these things can be planned in mass, like on hundreds of facilities. So it's not the sort of bespoke labor of a manual operation. It really can be done at scale quite broadly.
So in considering digital twins and all the vast amounts of data that comes from digital twins, or actually supports them rather, some of the problems that some companies run into is how do you actually manage all this data? How do you manage it from a technical perspective? But let's not worry about that yet. Mm-hmm. Let's worry about the non-technical executives. What do you recommend to them when you think about how you organize around it, how you actually get analytics and insights out of it? What are some insights and thoughts you have there?
So the most successful ways we've seen people start is with a pilot, thinking about either a particular facility or a particular aspect of that facility, and then trying to understand what is something that they wish they could drive as an outcome. Mm-hmm. And then it's a matter of, let's just look for the data that supports that use case. And so you break it down so that you can build a cross-functional team that can then work together on this. And then once you have success there, you can find another challenge and another challenge. So you don't, open it up and try to do everything all at once.
Don't boil the ocean.
Yeah.
Yes. So you probably won't be surprised at this, but I still run into a lot of companies that say, we got to build a data lake.
Yes.
And the first thing I ask them is, why? Like, what are you trying to solve for? And I think the same lesson is applied there as well. Is start with your insights. Start with what are the problems we're trying to solve? What are the use cases? Or in Amazonian speak, we like to work backwards from customer outcomes or problems. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a lesson that we all need to kind of take heed to.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and also you will find out you don't have all the data that you want.
Right.
You have too much data that you're not using, but then you might be missing a key piece of data that you need to figure out how to go get. And that in itself is a big key learning.
So Amy, you guys have had a pretty big acquisition. Can you tell me a little bit about that and what they do and what's behind it?
Absolutely. We did our first $1 billion acquisition which my team drove, and that was really exciting, as you can imagine. And we acquired a company called Innovyze. And Innovyze builds software that does design of water systems and also digital twins for water ecosystems. So what an amazing time to be working in water. It's such an important and vital resource, and there's just so much work happening around the globe to fix problems and create, opportunities for people in terms of how they get their water supply.
That sounds like a massive undertaking, not just the acquisition, but the mission of the business itself.
Yeah, the mission of the business was very exciting for us because it very much aligns to really our core values and areas that we were working in already. But by buying Innovyze, we connect that to the Autodesk portfolio. We really have an end-to-end solution for water now. So the two companies together, there was almost no overlap in what we were doing. So we're really coming to market with an incredibly strong story.
And it's also an applied example of like digital twin in a specific industry that has a meaningful outcome.
It's a great example of modernization too. So a lot of the digitization that needs to happen is in a lot of these water municipalities. There's just a lot of aging infrastructure there, and real opportunities to make an impact on less water lost in systems and delivering better experiences for everyone.
And I think water is something that we can all relate to because we all need it, right? It's such a critical resource that has lots of shortages or all kind of other issues in the world. But you mentioned that our infrastructure, even the United States, is older than people might think. So if you wire that up, it gives you tremendous insights. Right?
It does, because you can identify in advance where you might have problems, do maintenance in advance of problems. And if you think about, the example I like to use is, you're driving down the street, there's a sinkhole in your neighborhood, and all of the utility trucks and everyone else is there. Oftentimes that's because there was an undetected leak that went on for a long period of time. And when they finally realized it, it was, very, very, very severe. Whereas with things like digital twins for water, you can identify these problems when they're tiny problems and get in and address them before they become big problems.
That's tangible impact.
It is.
Kudos to you and the team on that.
Thank you.
Can you tell me a little bit more about how you guys were able to drive innovation in ways that you might not have otherwise been able to due to the things you get from the cloud?
Yes. The notion of a single coordinated model that is accessible to everyone working on a project is it just drives so much productivity. And I'll tell you, that's because in the past, people would have their own copies of these things, right? You'd have maybe 3 firms working on something. You'd have your copy, I'd have my copy. How were we sure that we were all working off of the same, most up-to-date information? How did we, communicate? That would be on like paper still, even today. So by centralizing all of this, people are able to work much more dynamically. They're able to actually build on each other's ideas and collaborate in real time by leveraging the cloud. It also makes it easier to onboard new stakeholders and to leverage the data throughout the whole design, through construction process. And really, it used to be stacks and stacks and stacks of drawings, and it still is in some cases.
Right.
And things get built in the wrong place and have to be torn up because people aren't working off the same coordinated information.
So iteration and innovation, is that at play also? Does that help?
It does.
Acceleration?
It does, because it's not just about putting the data in the cloud. It's okay. Now that it's here, how do we make it more valuable?
That's right. So overall, Amy, if you think to the future, fast forward however many years you want to think about, are there any words of wisdom or advice that you'd give to other leaders as they're contemplating all this?
So when I think of the future, the first word that actually popped into my head was uncertainty, because I never could have predicted, the last 2 years.
Yes.
But I think many of us thrived through this period of constant change in the last 2 years. And for me, I think as leaders, if we learn to embrace uncertainty, but also help our employees, have empathy for the employees, help them do their best work while they're navigating through the uncertainty, and be open and, take risks in the right places. We're accelerating so many things that I don't think we thought we were going to.
So Amy, thank you so much for your time today. It's often a privilege to be able to sit with people like yourself who have such accomplished organizations and great successes. So it's great for us to be able to celebrate those successes with you. Congratulations to the work you guys have done at Autodesk, and thanks so much for your investment of time today.
Well, thank you too. I really appreciate the opportunity.